Today we are going to talk about preparing for tests. Tests and examinations are an important part of school. Like most things in life, they have a good and a bad side. On the good side, they measure how much a student understands about a subject. They give us an idea of how well a child is learning. On the bad side, tests trigger anxiety and fear. Often, these are the reasons why many of our children dislike school. Taking tests involves two processes. One is when we study and prepare for the test. The other is when we actually take the test. Test preparation takes more time, and most think it's the hardest of the two. But taking a test, on the other hand, seems to be the most stressful. It can create anxiety and forgetfulness. When you were in school, remember how you felt about tests? Test means clammy hands and heart palpitations. They turn us into a bundle of nerves. Well, our children have many of the same feelings. Mentioning tests to them sets in motion an avalanche of nervous feelings. Let's do a little activity to help us see this. If you need to, pause the video and grab some chart paper or some regular paper, some pens and markers. Okay, I would like for you to illustrate how you felt about tests when you were in school. Express these feelings in any form: lines, pictures, images, colors, symbols, and words. Then try to analyze your final product. Use the same exercise later in the day with your child. This activity will allow you and your child to discuss the anxieties that the feelings create. It also shows whether you have negative, neutral, or positive feelings about the test. Tests are not monsters. They have no fangs, and they need not be feared. And this is something we as parents need to work on when we convey the message about tests to our children. We as parents can help decrease our children's panic and improve their performance on tests. For one, we can tell our children that tests are like games. Both tests and games have players and students follow direct instructions. So on both tests and games, we follow instructions. Games and tests challenge their participants. Games and tests can be fun. It may take a little bit to show our students that second one. Okay, so let's talk about the test-taking process. The first part of the test-taking process is to actually prepare for the test. And the second part is to take the test. So, why do we need to prepare for a test? The first reason is to take the fear out of tests. When we prepare for a test and we feel prepared, that helps take away that anxiety. The second is, if we're prepared for the test, it's going to help us to get good grades. It helps us to avoid the panic and the stress that comes along with the test. When we prepare, a teacher and a parent can see how much a student has truly learned, or maybe what they haven't learned, what they need more help with. And we want to be able to identify those areas for improvement. So, how can a student prepare for the test? First, they can attend class. They can be present and paying attention. They can read their textbook and all their class material. This is important. We've talked about this. They can take notes that can be referred to later or reviewed later. They can ask their teacher, where are the test questions going to come from? And they can always study their notes before a test. They can know the definitions of terms and concepts, and they can do this by looking them up, by reviewing, and this is a great time for parent help to go over terms and concepts that have been learned from class. They can practice and know itemized lists. They can know their categories, classification, elements, and parts. They can review all of the points that have been emphasized in class. They can review the materials that the teacher has asked them to study. And they can review questions and study guides And usually at the end of a chapter, there will be study questions that will help. So, here are the tips for preparing for a test. This is the most important one. We have to remember that time is the key to test preparation. We should not wait till the last minute to study for a test. We need to manage our time wisely so that we can prepare. We need to reread material for main ideas and details before our test. We need to make sure we write down all the key ideas, terms, and definitions that we want to remember. And we need to encourage our students, our children, to anticipate what will be on the test. So, this is a really simple but a good test preparation routine. This is the week before the test. On the first night, to skim the material, to review it and just to skim it and to see what might be covered on the test. On the second night, to skim quickly and then to review any notes that have been taken, to read aloud the key points for the information that's going to be tested. On the third night, to reread your notes and to begin studying the material out loud, to read it out loud so that it can be remembered. On the fourth night, compose and take a sample test. They can compose it themselves, or you could compose it for them. And then on the fifth or sixth night, review the material again and take a sample test given by a parent or a friend to see how well they know the material. You, as a parent, can become a testing engineer by providing a quiet place for your child to study, plenty of rest, a nutritious meal, and a complimentary and reassuring word. Find that place that we established at the beginning where they study and do their homework. That should be their place to study for an assessment, where they can go and it's quiet and they can have quiet, uninterrupted time. Make sure that they're resting. They're not staying up late playing video games. They're not out too late. They're getting plenty of rest. That they have nutritious meals at home and snacks. And then that we encourage and support them as parents, that we're complimentary, and that we reassure them, you can do this, you've got this. So here's some test-taking tips. We need to tell our children to just take a breath, breathe slowly and deeply, and to know you've got this. Before you start the test, look over the entire test. This gives you an idea of how long the test might take, how much of it you already know, and it helps with time management. To read the directions very carefully, or if the teacher's reading the directions, to listen carefully to the teacher. To watch the clock and to budget their time very carefully. Not to try to be the first one finished. If there's someone in their classroom that's bothering them, that could hinder them while they're taking the test, to mention this to their teacher and ask if they can be moved. To have pens, pencils, erasers, anything that they might need for the test, to have it ready. Work on the easy questions first. If there's something that's very difficult, they can make a note that they won't, so they won't forget they haven't done it, and to go back and do that later. And to always proofread answers before turning in a test. I see this so much as a teacher. Students, when they go back and look, they will see careless mistakes that they made. So to look back over their test before they turn it in. Okay, here's some ground rules for tests. Students should know how much time they will have to take the test. They should know, do all the questions have to be answered? Because on some tests, they may not be penalized for answering a question. On most assessments, they are, but they need to know that up front. Can they use a pencil, or should they use ink? Do the questions have to be answered in order? And what kind of test will it be? Because as we're going to find out, there are different kinds of tests. There's an objective test that requires identification or brief written responses and memorization of details. We said this a lot in our social studies classes and our science classes. So this can include true and false, multiple choice, matching, and short answer completion type items. When you're practicing testing with your child, it's important that we practice different kinds of tests, different types of answers, and you can pull from this. Ask them some true or false questions. Get them to pay very close attention to the wording in the true or false. That one word thrown in, not or never or always, can change the whole meaning of that sentence. Give them some multiple choice questions. Somewhere none of the above is the answer, or all of the above. Some matching items. This is great for vocabulary words. And then, of course, some completion short answer questions. Okay. Essay tests require long answers. Students must analyze, compare, interpret, evaluate, or synthesize information. And it's important on essay tests. They are longer and they take more time, but we allow our students, especially our older students who are doing a lot of this, to practice these at home. When your child is taking an essay test, we want them to first know what is wanted in the essay to make sure they're answering what is being asked. They always open the essay with an introduction. Organize the body of the essay in a systematic, logical way that makes sense. We want them to show relationships between the people, the events, and the items they're writing about in their essays. And to be able to compare and contrast information. Your child is being taught all of this in school. Many of our students have their own writing teacher, but if not, the reading teacher teaches writing, or maybe in my situation, the math teacher actually teaches writing. But they're taught how to write essays from a very early stage. And it's important that we allow them to practice these at home, and that we look for these things in an essay. We look for the introduction. We look for a body of the essay that's systematic and that's logically organized, and that they are able to show relationships in their essays and to compare and contrast information. And we want them to be able to identify patterns in an essay. Also on an essay test, write the answers using keywords or terms the teacher or the text use. And we teach kids to go back and look in their text, to pull that evidence from the text and to use those words when they're answering their essay questions. To always use proper grammar and sentence structure. And this is something when they're going back and proofreading, this is a big one to look for, is to look for proper grammar and to make sure that the sentence structure is right in their essay. And we always close our essay with a conclusion. Okay, so where do tests come from? The first could be a teacher-prepared test, and this reflects information that the teacher thinks is important. It's just a test that the teacher makes on her own, or maybe with a group of teachers. Then there's the commercially prepared tests that come from our textbooks. In our county, our reading series is Journeys, and so they make the tests that our students take on their reading, on their chapters in their reading book, on their lessons in their reading book. So commercially prepared tests are actually made by the companies who produce or who print the textbooks. Standardized tests, and that's the big one, reflect information that conforms to national standards. This is your GMAS, formerly our CRCT. This is our GMAS test. So, there's a lot in this module, and it's all good stuff. But I want you to take away from this that we have to remember that tests are a part of the school day. They're not a separate part, and it's not something that should be feared. We need to teach our students, our children, that tests are important, that we want them to be able to show what they know. It's a way that they can showcase their knowledge, and they can shine bright. And it's also a way, as a teacher and you as a parent, that we can brag on them about what they've learned, about the way that they've studied and prepared for tests. We need to find little things not just the test itself, but we need to be very positive and encouraging about the way they're preparing for the test. I see you started studying early this week. Hey, I love how you went and found your quiet place and you used some of the tips that we've gone over. This would be a very good module to print some of these lists and to have them near their study area where you have the tips for studying so that you can review these and that your child can review these, so that we can help take that fear out of test taking. Thank you.